Alright boys, so in this video I'm going to break down the entire scaling roadmap all the way up to 250k a month and beyond that as well. I'm going to cover basically like step by step, level by level of the entire agency scaling phase, every hire you need to make at each single stage, systems you need to implement, the bottlenecks you're going to be facing, and obviously like the solution to all those constraints at each single level as well. That's ultimately going to allow you to get to the next level, and then what you do at the next level to get to the next level, and so on and so forth. So yeah boys, make sure you watch until the end and enjoy. So in this part of the video, I'm basically going to break down every single level of the agency that we're going to hit, based on how many clients you have, how much you're doing in revenue, and also each constraint that you're going to have at each level as well, and exactly how to fix those constraints and basically go to the next level, and what you do at each level as well to get further and further as soon as humanly possible. Okay, so yeah, make sure you take notes along the side of this entire video. Tons and tons of sauce in here, so hence why I have my Pellegrino here. I don't have any ice or lemon, unfortunately, but should still do the job. So let's just get into it, boys. So the first thing I want you guys to understand is the new level, new devil ideology, okay? Because each revenue milestone has its own unique devil, okay, that you need to slay. At 15k a month, 20k a month, 50k a month, 100k a month, 200k a month, they're all gonna have its own sort of problem and like constraints essentially, and that's kind of like the devil, I like to call it, because what got you to 20k a month is not really going to get you to 100k a month essentially. So you're going to need new team members, team members that you haven't even heard of existed, like what the fuck is a CSM, for example, right? New skills and a higher pain tolerance at each level, okay? Because how I like to personally see it is that the amount of money that you're making is just a direct reflection of how much stress you can actually handle, right? When you scale the agency, you're going to need new team members, right? So the team is going to grow. There's going to be way more responsibility on you, meaning there's more pressure, right? And if you can't withhold that pressure, you're just going to fucking roll up in a ball and start crying, right? Because for example, if me 2 years ago would have the amount of pressure and stress and everything that I have and responsibility in general that I have right now, if I had that 2 years ago, I would literally cry up in a ball and start just crying my eyes out, right? Because it's more like step by step by step with how much stress and responsibility and just pain tolerance and everything they're able to hold, right? So you need to go like gradually and gradually and gradually up. That's why you very, very rarely see someone go from 0 to 200k a month in a month, right? Because they're not really going to be able to withhold that amount of pain tolerance and stress and everything that comes with it, unless they've ran a business that was doing 150, 200, 300k a month beforehand, right? Because scaling is exactly like a video game, okay? If you restart, it's going to be way easier for you to pick up to the next level that you were at before, essentially. So reaching to the next level though, what you haven't conquered yet is going to be a new challenge with a new devil to conquer, right? So this is kind of how I like to view it. There's going to be different devils at different stages here. That's going to be far more complicated to solve, more responsibility on your belt and everything. So the team that gets you to 6 figures won't really get you to 7 as well. Okay, this is like a really hard learning curve I personally had, because the C players and D players that you have on your team, that is like a good culture fit, but on a skill level, they're not really good enough to be brought and taken with you. You don't really want to drag them with you up to 7 figures essentially, because you only really want to have like B players, A players, S players, that sort of stuff when you scale up. And so there is going to be lots of hard conversations with people. You will have to fire people, even though they might be the perfect culture fit, but the skill deficit is so big it's not worth training them and dragging them along to the new standard of talent required. Okay, now a little side note here as well, boys. Once you have conquered a level, your personal standard within yourself is going to change, okay? Like I personally won't accept making anything less than 100k a month profit anymore, because it makes me feel sick, right? It's way, way below my personal standard that my identity holds, okay? We're going to go way deeper into how we can program this inside the mindset section and get you to that level faster, essentially, where you feel like 50k a month is complete shit. Just think about how much money you make right now and what's the bare minimum you would accept yourself to make. And chances are that number that you have in mind is significantly different than if I ask you that question 2, 3, maybe even 5, 6 years ago, right? And that's the power of shaping a new identity, okay? Because your personal standard within yourself won't allow you to make anything less, okay? So let this be a prime example of how everything you want can be found internally, right? This is why the quote, internal reality equals external reality, right? Because everything within yourself is just being projected out into the universe right now. So when it comes down to inevitable fuckery, okay, I do want to give you a little heads up here as well, because as you scale up here, like you can do all the training in the world here before the fight, but when you're in the ring, it's a completely different story, right? As Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan until they get fucking punched in the face, all right? So the harsh truth that I want to give you here is that you will be fucking punched in the face, right? It is going to be hard to prepare for it, but one frame I put on situations like this that served me immensely was that it was all in divine timing. You know, there was a lesson to be learned from that mistake that you did. And the universe basically wanted me to learn a lesson and follow a new path I couldn't yet see, all right? And I can tell you from experience that upon reflection, I wouldn't change a thing about what happened, even in the worst periods of scaling the agency here, okay? Because the hardest part for people and mentees and just everyone I've seen in general is to put your ego aside and just be patient, right? But if you can do that, you will beat all these fucking kids out there who are building the agency for a one-time Stripe screenshot. You know, they had 40, 50K a month, and, you know, they obviously don't show you the dispute rate they have, just so they can start selling coaching, right? And start selling to B2C, you know, people who want to start an AI agency, all of that nonsense, essentially. So there's just a little graph showing you what people think it's going to look like to scale up. You know, it's going to be very gradual. You know, I'm going to make this higher. Everything's going to be super, super smooth and so on. Bro, it's not going to be that way. Trust me. Like, what it really looks like is this right here, right? You're going to hire a CSM. CSM is going to be trained for a full month, you know, one-on-one, just like I did a couple of months ago. And then they're just going to leave, right? Because they got a better job offer for some different company, right? And so then you start looking for a new CSM, and, you know, and you just wasted a lot of time essentially. But there's a lesson to be made there as well, okay? So there is going to be really, really fucking hard times. And as I was kind of saying, like last October, I had my entire media bar team and my CSM. I just spent a full month one-on-one training, leave me out of the complete blue, okay? But looking back, like this was probably the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because now we have incredible SOPs, and we have an abundance of candidates as well in backup in case, you know, a CSM leaves. I know exactly who to go and hire next, right? Because I have 10 different super qualified ones that I've interviewed before, but I didn't go for, essentially, right? For every single position, I have that essentially. And, you know, we have really dialed in client success systems and media buying systems in the back end as well. And I just want to prepare you for this, because I wish I had this expectation going into it, right? It would have helped me out a lot, because most people in this space, they sell you this linear A to C success path, and it's just complete bullshit, right? Embrace the suck and know that it's happening to serve you, okay? I'm doing you a complete favor here, right? It might hurt your ego and it might not be what you want to hear, but it's just the real reality of it, you know? And I'm just doing this out of love, you know, because I want you to win, right? So a final thing to keep in mind here when scaling the agency really fast is that don't get attached to your crazy high profit margins, okay? Because at scale, their margins will get smaller, but you will also buy back more of your time by hiring the right people to replace you in the low leverage activities in the business, and eventually even get, outsource the high leverage ones as well. Now, you do not have to continue to grow the agency if you don't want to, right? There's going to be certain points where you kind of want to chill a bit, you know. But from my personal opinion, I'd much rather have an agency doing 100K a month with 50% profit margins and me working like an hour a day than an agency doing 50K a month with 80% margin, where I do literally everything and work 12, 14, 16 hours a day, right? It takes longer to scale up to that point, but it's so damn worth it. Trust me, okay? Now, going into the actual section here, I'm going to break down every single level of the agency from 0 and upwards of 150, 250K a month and beyond that as well. Now, at each level here, I'm going to break down how to know you're actually at this level, right? Not everything here is going to be 100% accurate. There's going to be something you're ahead on, something that you're behind on. But the premise of this section is that you should at least resonate with the constraints at that level and have some sort of similarities, you know. And I'm also going to break down the revenue structure, expenses, organizational chart, you know, the team, all that good stuff. And also the common pitfalls here as well at each level and solutions to those constraints. Okay, so let's get into the first level of the agency. Okay, I like to call this the skill stack phase. And this is kind of how you know you're here. You've just picked a niche and you're trying to get product market fit. You got less than 5 clients, mostly on a performance models or even free trials or, you know, really cheap retainers like $500 a month or something. And your revenue is between 0 and upwards of 10K a month. In terms of the revenue structure here, you probably have 1 to 5 clients at 500 to $1,000 a month average retainer value. You know, some clients you might be charging 1,200, others you might be charging 300 a month. You know, it really depends. And you often do like performance based, or majority are even free trials just to get them on board, or you have some crazy agreement with crazy guarantee in it. It really depends. In terms of the organizational chart here, it's solely just you doing everything here, running in circles, you know, client fulfillment, doing the selling, acquisition, like literally everything of the business here. And because it's solely just you here, you don't really have any team costs at all. You might have some overhead in terms of softwares and stuff like Go High Level, Zapier, stuff like that. And your profit margin is like 90, 95, really high essentially, because, you know, you're not really paying yourself essentially. In terms of the common pitfalls here, one of them being that you feel scared that you can't sign clients because you don't know how to deliver, right? And another one is that you come into SMA or the agency space in general with the misconception that you can start signing 2K a month retainers with no effort, right? And you're focusing too much on fulfillment and binge watching gurus on YouTube all day instead of actually taking action, okay? So this is kind of like the common pitfalls that I've seen people in this level make essentially. Now, how to solve these problems is very simple. Just focus on the first part of the entire agency, which is the outreach and the sales part, okay? So if you have cash flow to invest in ads, like 1.5K a month minimum, like $50 a day, then get started with that immediately, as it will save you a ton of time, okay? You will literally sign clients in the first week. I'm gonna show you like the entire paid ad section and everything eventually here, but just keep that in mind. It's gonna literally give you an ROI really quickly if you implement everything in that paid ad section that I mentioned to you. Now, if you don't implement the ad stuff, then I'd recommend just doing like an SMS blast in terms of cold outbound process to start getting more appointments and closing more deals. You might even do some cold email. It's kind of up to you. The main focus here is just to build up a lot of cash so you can eventually pivot into paid ads, okay? I'd also recommend you build a pitch deck to sell prospects on sales calls, and also start signing clients on pay on results basis to earn while you learn, essentially. I'm not really a fan of these free trials. The best way to do this, in my opinion, is to get paid when you book the client's appointments, right? So you just want to get some product market fit, right? You want to try your delivery and make sure that it actually works, just so you have that proof of concept in mind that you can actually deliver before you start delivering at scale, if that makes sense. As I was kind of saying, you should go into this phase with the intention of learning as much as humanly possible about fulfillment in the backend, not to make a boatload of money here, but just to stack skills, right? Because you basically want to bend over backwards here just to get your small client base results and do literally everything possible that you can to get them results essentially, okay? Because once they get results, that's when you start stacking up these testimonials, right? Video testimonials, interviews, all of that good stuff. And get one client as well to commit to being a strategic partner, which you can use as leverage in your sales process so you can begin charging upfront, right? Meaning whenever you're on a sales call and the person want to speak to one of your clients, you can just tell this client like, hey, you know, I'll pay you like $100 if you just talk to this client over the phone for a couple of minutes and convince him to actually work with me, all right? And then that way you basically close way more clients in the beginning here. Now there is a little social proof SOP here as well that is linked. Obviously you have access to this full Miro board where you can just go through this and how to request testimonials, you know, video requests, all of that's good stuff here. Testimonial calls, questions to ask them, post-call steps as well, literally everything here. So just have a look at that whenever you get time. Now you also want to develop your offer / guarantee once you have confidence in delivery and you got 1 to 2 testimonials under your belt to start beginning charging upfront, okay? Now, how do you know that you graduated from this level with the agency? You got 1 to 2 client testimonials, one referral partner who speaks to you on the fence prospects if it's needed, and you have more than 3 clients on a retainer, and you built out your offer/guarantee and transitioned from a pay on results model to a retainer, and you've signed a few clients on the new retainer model. Okay, so that is pretty much like the first part of the agency here, skill stack phase. Moving on to the second phase here, delegation dilemma. Okay, so you're gonna be at this level of the agency if you have 5 to 10K saved up in a cash reserve, essentially like a war chest, and you're feeling super overwhelmed and literally doing 99% of the work yourself. You have between 5 to 10 clients, maybe even a little bit more. Revenue is between like 10 to 20K a month, and you're understanding your market better, dialing in cold outreach. You got a solid understanding on how to onboard and fulfill clients as well. Okay, you pretty much got proof of concept both in the back end and in the front end that you're able to sell and deliver. So your revenue structure right now is you probably have between 5 to 10 clients at $1,000 a month average retainer. Might be higher, might even be less. You know, it might be different for each client as well. And you fully moved to a standardized retainer model and transition commission only clients or let them go. All right. And you're also just selling month-to-month commitments, and you have a few clients paying you a retainer every month who have actually renewed. All right. In terms of the organizational chart here, you might have a black hat VA who kind of does all the low leverage tasks for you, and such as like managing their ads, you know, doing onboarding clients, all of that good stuff. I'll get back to that in a minute. Your cost structure here as well, you might be paying that VA between 500 to 800 a month, likely part-time or just project-based initially. And you have about 500 to 1K a month in overhead. And your profit margin is still very high though, 80 to 90%, because you're doing a lot of the work here. You're pretty much just running in circles still. So the common pitfalls here is that you have clients running ads for a bunch of different services or in different niches, and it's getting hard to create a one-size-fits-all solution. And cold outreach isn't signing you as many clients as you want, and it is sucking up a ton of your time, although it is very comfortable for you. All right. Holding back on running paid ads because you're too scared to sacrifice some profit, essentially, because you don't really have that proof of concept that it's going to work with you. And that's why you have that fear of, you know, going to a place that's uncomfortable, right? You know how to sell people on a commission model, but you have a limiting belief around taking payments over the phone and don't know how, or get super nervous every time you pitch an upfront payment. So you offer a free trial or you even discount the retainer, right? And you're overwhelmed with work, and in order to scale, you need someone else to help. There's not enough hours in the day simply, as you're doing cold outreach, you're doing the selling, you're onboarding clients, you're managing client ads, you're communicating with them as well. And this is basically where you need to learn how to hire your first VA to delegate the lowest leverage tasks, and you can hire them part-time, even full-time on 500 to 800 bucks a month, and they basically understand like all parts of the business. But I'd recommend that they mainly just focus on the back end stuff. Now, how to solve these problems is to get very crystal clear on who you serve and who you don't, okay? Simply niche down, all right? And pricing here as well, move to a 3-month contract paid in fulls on the front end, because this allows you to go from collecting, you know, 1K to 2K upfront to charging 3K to 6K upfront, which will give you more immediate cash here that you can reinvest into paid ads and just scale way faster, okay? If there's one thing I regret in the agency here as I was scaling up, is that I didn't start running paid ads way sooner, okay? Now, I would start running paid ads on a small scale here, do some broad video ads here, 50 to 100 bucks per day, depending on the cash you have saved up. And then also you want to build out a landing page with a survey on it and build out a B2B sub account in Go High Level and dial the leads as soon as they opt in to book them in for a sales call, okay? We're going to go way deeper into the paid ad stuff in a later part of this course, but just keep that in mind. This is how I would solve these problems that you're facing at this level in the agency, okay? In terms of the sales here, you want to build a sales framework here and improve your pitch deck, meaning like you add case studies, you leverage that, and you refine your unique selling points here now that you understand your market and your niche way better, okay? Because personally, I went from, you know, working with beginner coaches that was already doing 50K a month and so on, to now solely only working with coaches who's already established. You know, they got a high ticket offer, they know how to sell high ticket as well, and we just solely turn away from working with, you know, beginners essentially, to now only working with people who's already doing 10, 20, 30K a month and beyond, who want to get to 100, 200, 300K a month and beyond. Okay, so get very, very clear on who you serve, and then from there you tailor literally everything here accordance with that. Okay, the pricing in accordance with that, you know, how much can these people actually afford on average, and also you want to obviously leverage all the unique selling points and the messaging in the ads and everything to suit that new niche. Okay, now in terms of the hiring here, you do want to hire your first VA to help you out with some admin stuff and just management and whatever is taking up majority of your time throughout the days. I'd pay them between 500 to 800 a month for full time. Now keep in mind though, you do get what you pay for. If you have the cash flow to invest, I'd probably go for someone around like 800 to 1.2K a month, as the skill gap is going to be very, very huge. All right, so you can either get someone from the Philippines, or you can even get someone in like South America as well. I'm going to show you all of that in the hiring process here later. But in terms of the SOP creation here and delegation, you basically want to start mapping out all the lowest leverage things that take up majority of your time. And chances are it's going to be onboarding clients, you know, setting up their ads, managing their ads, scripting their ads, all of that stuff. And just texting them as well, responding to them, even doing check-in calls with them, all of that stuff. So you basically want to record Loom videos on you doing the entire process from, you know, setting up a client to launching them, even replying to their messages on Slack, all of that good stuff, and break it down into a step-by-step guide. And basically just demonstrate, duplicate, and delegate. Okay, that's all it really comes down to here in terms of the SOP creation. Now, how to know if you've graduated. Okay, you have a consistent lead flow from paid ads, on average like 4 or 5 leads or more per day coming through, and you've documented SOPs for at least 3 core processes, whether that's onboarding, launching clients, you know, even managing clients, stuff like that. Your first VA is handling over 20 hours of work weekly and saving you a ton of time on low-level tasks. Okay, and your closing rate is 20% or more on sales calls, with an upfront payment for a full 3-month contracted period essentially. And you've also sold your first paid in full from like 5-6K, and you're collecting 40% or more cash upfront on all the new clients. Okay, so that is essentially the delegation dilemma level. Now let's go over to the next level of the agency here, which is the scaling shit show. Okay, I personally was stuck at this level really long because I didn't have that clarity in mind that this Miro board essentially would have given me if I had it, you know, a year ago essentially. It is by far the longest and most painful stage of the agency, this level and the 4th level, which we're going to break down shortly. Because at this level, you're going to have between 15 to 25 clients. You might have 1 to 2 VAs on your team, and you're growing pretty fast, but managing your clients and the operation side of your business is a fucking shit show. Okay, clients are coming in and they're complaining that they're not getting as much support and as attention as they used to or had the expectation to get. And then you might even have your first couple bad reviews and clients that leaves on a bad standing essentially. You're churning clients, you might be getting disputes, chargebacks, stuff like that. Your revenue is likely between 20 to 40K a month, and you're running paid ads to get clients and have successfully signed, you know, 5-10 clients from paid ads, even more than that. And as I mentioned, you're struggling with churn issues because your product is kind of shit and you're considering becoming a guru. Okay, this is the level where majority of the people you see preach all these, you know, start your AI agency coaching offers in the space. They all just scale their agency to this level, like 20, 30K a month. And then they're flexing that Stripe screenshot on all their ads and everything. And then they're helping beginners basically get into this AI agency, right? Selling the dream essentially, because they didn't know how or didn't really want to keep running the agency because they didn't really have the balls to actually fix the problems in the first place, right? Now, in terms of the revenue structure here, you most likely have 15 to 25 clients at a 1.5 to 2.5K a month on average, contracted for 3 months here with 50% paid in upfront on average. And you're starting to implement performance components to increase average client value, basically like commission on outcomes, whether that's revenue share or, you know, you pay us, or let's say the program is 12K, but you only pay 6K upfront and the other 6K once you've made, you know, 50K essentially from the system, stuff like that. Your cost structure here as well, you might have 1 to 2 VAs. That's now full time, so they're costing you anywhere from 1K to 1.6K a month. You might have a media bar that's costing you 800 to 1,000 a month. And you might even have a B2B setter who's calling up all your leads that comes from the paid ads here. Now there's two types of setters that you can get here for the B2B side of your agency. One of them being like just 800 a month in base, and then they get like a little commission, like 50 to 100 bucks, depending on the outcome of the closed deal. Another type of setter you can get is someone who is like full-time US based, and they're just working on like a 5 to 10% commission. That's why like this right here, it kind of depends if it's, 1K, but it can also be upwards of 2.5K a month, depending on which type of setter that you're actually getting. We're going to go into this deeper into the hiring section of the course here. But here as well, you most likely have your first client success manager that you pay 3 to 5K a month. And this is like your first significant first world country proper person hire, you could call it, okay? You might also have some overhead here of 2 to 3K a month. Your tech stack is expanding with different reporting tools, different softwares and all that stuff. And your profit margin as well is leaning down as you're scaling. So you're probably at like 50 to 60% profit margin here because you overhire here to set yourself up for scale, all right? And if you have a call center as well, setters in the back end who calls up your clients' leads, then you probably have one agent for every 10 clients, depending on the lead flow, okay, and how much the clients are spending on ads and everything too. So here as well, it's just a bit more deeper look into the actual revenue structure here that you can take a look at. So yeah, these are basically just some common expenses and profits, all that sort of stuff, overhead and everything. That's very, very common at this level. Going into the common pitfalls here at this level is that you're getting a lot of unqualified leads coming in and wasting calendar space with no shows and tire kickers, because people are coming in from the ads, filling out the survey, and they directly book the demo call, like the sales call, which is like a 30-40 minute call on your schedule right into it, right? And as a result of that, you're getting no shows on your schedule. That's wasting your time. You're getting tire kickers, people that's not qualified. And you physically cannot handle all the client communication here as well, because taking sales calls, your calendar is crazy because you're onboarding clients too, or it's getting to a point of being a problem, right? Your calendar availability is going to be very, very limited here. And client fulfillment is getting more and more difficult to manage, and clients begin to churn at a higher rate because you can't give them as much personalized support or communication as they used to have, right? And you don't have any tracking systems for each department of the business either. And you don't understand what your core KPIs are, and how to track them, right? So you don't have proper metric tracking for both your agency and also in the backend for clients, right? Now, how to solve these problems here? In terms of the sales and the marketing component first here, I would really, really recommend that you get on board that B2B setter for the agency and move on to a 2-call closing process. So the setter basically qualifies the leads, and then you only take the qualified demo calls, right? And you also want to add more qualification to your funnel on the front end to get more of your ideal clients, basically create more friction, okay? So it's going to go from people filling out the survey on the funnel to, instead of booking in on like your calendar directly for that 30-40 minute sales call, they book into the setter's calendar for like a 10-15 minute phone call just over the phone. That way, more of the leads that fill out the survey is going to be booking, like 90, almost 100% of them are going to book that phone call because their barriers are very, very low, and it's just a phone call. Like there's no, like they don't need to prepare their calendar or, do anything major for it, right? So that way, the setter is going to take that intro call, which we call it an intro call, and basically just ask them qualifying questions over the phone. And if they're qualified, then they're going to book that lead onto your schedule for the demo, okay? That way you don't get all these tire kickers, people that's unqualified, people that's wasting your calendar space and all that stuff. And you're ultimately going to have way more availability and free up more of your time on the calendar, okay? In terms of the client success part here, you also want to hire your first client success manager on a 3 to 5K a month. Again, you get what you pay for, and begin building out a boot camp to ramp them up, basically like full in-depth SOPs and everything, training modules and everything for them. Keep in mind here, you are hiring early and profit will take a hit, but you'll thank me later when you make way more money because you have this person in place sooner rather than too late when you're back to back on client calls and can't do anything else, right? I've been there and it's not fun, all right? Now for the first month, I'd probably just pay them 2K because the first month is always just going to be fully in-depth training and then you handing over your existing client base to that client success manager. And then in the second month, depending on like how many clients they're managing and everything, you just increase the retainer. And obviously there's going to be commission as well on top of this. And this person is going to be fully US based as well. So you can hire them on Indeed. I've personally spent a lot of money on Indeed ads. Haven't had the best results with it. So I would recommend that you just reach out to people that's in high ticket sales already or looking for a high ticket sales role and just, offer them this role because they will have to need sales experience because they're going to upsell clients in the back end and all that stuff, right? It's more so like a selling position than an actual account manager, success manager position, right? Because that stuff right there is very, very easy to learn. But the sales component here is obviously a bit more difficult, right? And you also want to get someone who's really, really hungry and willing to make more on commissions based on, getting client interviews, testimonials from clients, upselling them in the back end, stuff like that, okay? And you basically want to start SOPing out your entire client journey and onboarding process here too. And I'd also set up a project management tool like ClickUp to manage your client communication, okay? Later here, I'm going to break down my entire ClickUp setup that we have at scale right now for managing clients, keeping track of them, all of that good stuff. And you basically want to set up all these sales systems, such as the new client processes here as well, and other key automations like notifying you of when a client needs a check-in call, when a client performance is below KPIs, then the media buyers are notified, all of that stuff as well. And you want to standardize your fulfillment here too, okay? So everything can be similar between clients, right? You're on the same type of funnels essentially, but you just tailor them accordingly to that client. Similar type of ads, and exact same automations for every single client. It's just the messaging that's going to be tailored exactly for each client, right? And create a GHL snapshot here as well that can be automatically copied in onboarding. Now, I'd also put a retention tracker in place and build an offboarding system to track and audit why clients churn, okay? That could be, for example, 7 days after onboarding, they get an automated text from you, from your client success manager, saying like, hey, how's the onboarding process and everything? Could you just give us feedback on it? And then after that, they get put on a 30-day schedule where we basically just send them a survey every 30 days and say like, hey, what are you happy about? What are you not happy about? And all that stuff. And that way it will pull into your agent tracking software where you have a cloud agent that gets constantly all that data and you get notified whenever the churn rate is going down or up, whatever. We're going to go way more in depth on that later here as well. Now, how to know that you graduated from this stage of the agency? You've hired a B2B setter and you got a 80% show up rate on your demo calls. That's the sales calls that you're taking. And you only speak to qualified prospects 99% of the time, okay? And the client success manager as well is handling 50 to 70% of the client communication, and you've handed off majority of the clients to them. And you've standardized your fulfillment process for all the clients here. You got templates for ads, you got GHL snapshot and everything. So pretty much everything you just plug and play whenever you sign a new client, right? It's super, super simple. And the actual setup process doesn't really take that long whenever you sign a new client. And you've also got a project management system to manage clients at scale, and your churn rate is below 15% on a monthly basis, okay? The reason why I was stuck at this level here for such a long period of time is mainly because, finding the right client success manager is going to take you a bit of time. Building out the entire bootcamp for the client success manager as well is going to take a shit ton of time. And also the ClickUp project management system here is going to take a lot of time to build out. And just standardizing the entire fulfillment process here is as well going to take quite a bit of time, right? So that's why I'd really, really recommend that you just get that setter on board ASAP, just to, not have demo calls on your schedule with people who is tire kickers and just wasting your time, so that you free up more of your availability on the day-to-day, so you can just be in the trenches building out stuff here in the back end, okay? Because, for example, with me, like I hired one client success manager, trained them for like a full month, and then they left, right? And then I had to start that hiring process again and again and again, and just kind of repeat the entire thing until I finally found a good one and they stuck with me. And that way I was able to hand off all the clients to them, which is also going to take, 2-3 weeks. And then, we scaled up ads, and then we moved on to the next level of the agency here, okay? Obviously, like with everything here, when it comes to the client success manager bootcamp, even the sales and marketing bootcamp, like all of this stuff inside the mentorship, you get literally everything here, plug and play. You pretty much get every single video, every single SOP, every single tracking system, literally everything that I use personally in my own agency here, which you can see literally step by step here. It's very, very in-depth. You get this full entire thing inside the mentorship and everything. Same goes for the closer position, B2B setter position, media buyer position, literally everything here. We got super, super in-depth tracking of everything. But enough of that. Let's get back into the next level of the agency here, which is the founder's friction. Okay, so you are here if you have between 20 to 40 clients. Your revenue has been between 40 to 80K a month. Your profit margin is getting smaller and smaller because you're having to hire a bigger team. And the team may be around 5 to 10 people at this point. If you have a call center calling up leads for your clients in the back end, you might even have more of them, 15 clients or so, depending on the lead flow again. And you are the constraint of the business because you simply don't have the time to sell new prospects. And you need to also hire a sales rep because you don't have enough time to push these big projects forward in deep work, which can be building out bootcamps in the backend, building out more systems, stuff like that. Okay, so your revenue at this point is that you have 20 to 40 clients at 1.5 to 3K a month average retainer, and you also have a performance model fully implemented here as well, and you're consistently collecting at least 20K a month in new cash from paid ads, or signing 7+ clients a month from the ads. And your organizational chart probably looks something like this. You have one closer, one media buyer, operational wizard who kind of does all the tech stuff and builds out automations in the back end, does cloud stuff, all that good stuff. And you probably have 1 to 3 call center agents, and obviously like a CSM, media buyers, all of that good stuff too. Your cost structure here, you probably pay your team between like 20 to 35K a month, maybe even more than that. You have one CSM you pay 3.5 to 5.5K a month on average to. You have a setter who you pay 1K to 3K a month because base plus commission. Again, kind of depends on what type of B2B setter you have. You probably have a sales rep at this point too that you pay 4 to 10K a month in commission only. It might even be more than that. And you also have a onboarding or tech VA, like a go high level tech specialist, I like to call it, that you pay on average like 800 to 1.2K a month. Because there's bonus incentives in each role here. And you have an operational wizard here that you pay 1.2 to 2K a month to. And you have one or two media buyers here that you pay 1 to 2K a month to as well. And your overhead is 5 to 8K a month. Full tech stack is now implemented. And obviously you spend a lot on ads too. And your profit margin is between 45 to 60%, okay? The common pitfalls at this level is that you are literally the biggest constraint in the business, okay? You're spending too much time doing everything, especially sales, and you can't focus on moving big projects forward or managing the team at the level that they need to be managed. Your hiring process here at this point as well is taking too much time, and you have B2C players on your team they're afraid to let go of because you don't have enough candidates to replace them with, right? You don't have an abundance of, A and B players in the pipeline that you can instantly just pull them in and replace, whoever you want to replace with, all right? And you feel like you're in Slack 10 hours a day, answering the same basic questions and fixing fires instead of pushing the needle forward in the business. And you're ramping up new team members as well. You feel like you're repeating yourself with the same answers to the same questions, and it just takes so much of your time to ramp someone up. You're scared that key players in your team are soon going to leave because culture is kind of non-existent, right? And you don't really know how to lead or manage a team properly either. And yeah, managing the team is getting hard, and it's almost impossible to keep in the loop with what they're doing and if they're being productive or just jerking off all day, right? Because you don't have any tracking systems in place to actually know what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, right? How to solve these problems here? In terms of the sales team, you want to hire your first ever commission-only sales rep, closer essentially, to take sales calls, basically the demos that the setter is going to be booking in. And yes, they can be better than you. The current closer I have on board my team is way, way better at closing deals and objection handling and all of that stuff than I ever was at sales. This is simply just a limiting belief that you've been put on, whoever guru you've been watching or binge watching on YouTube. And you need to build out a sales rep bootcamp to ramp them up as well. And this is kind of like the scorecard you want to follow for the closer position, right? You want them to be closing at a minimum of 30% here. and have at least 40% upfront cash collected on the program, and basically have listed out all their KPIs here that you can see in this document right here. Now, when it comes down to the sales systems, you want to implement a sales team management system as well, with daily meetings, call reviews, and performance tracking, and learn how to manage and lead a sales team, both the setters and the closers. Now, you also want to build out a proper hiring system in Go High Level, right? So full pipeline, and create application forms for each key position with a mini video hiring letter, basically selling them on why they should actually apply to this role. And you basically keep the hiring machine on at all times, okay? Because you never want to run dry of candidates for every single role, okay? Because if your CSM leaves tomorrow, then you have like another 10 CSMs to choose between and just get them on board instantly, right? So you don't really spend another month trying to find and DM people, you know, that want to get into being a client success manager and all that stuff. Now, you also want to create standardized SOPs for the most common client problems and the scenarios that comes up here, and make text/email templates on the client success managers and team so that they can use that to send to clients, right? They know basically what to reply to clients whenever they get a question from them. You also want to build out a client success ticketing system in the backend so you can track who's in the onboarding stage, who's churned, who's paused, who's active. And you basically want a standardized like a Slack communication SOP as well for every single role. And you also want to standardize the onboarding here of new team members. So move all of your SOPs from being in a fucking Google Drive to an actual school program, like a school classroom, you know, like you have one module for each role essentially. And inside each module, you have a full bootcamp for the key positions that you hire. And that way, like it's way more a step-by-step and easier process to follow, you know. And I'd recommend you literally put like every single person you're gonna hire in your agency, you want like a boot camp from A to C built out in school. Okay, it's literally like $9 a month, and it's way fucking better than having them in a Google Drive bullshit thing. Okay, because people are not gonna be going through that at all, right? Just learn from my mistakes. All right. Now you also want to implement some monthly meetings, setting projections for the company here as well. Develop your actual core values, not copy some other businesses or agency. You want to literally build your own core values. Okay, what is it that you value within your team and your company in general? And you want to develop a big enough vision for the company, for the A players to fit their vision inside of the core, to fit their vision inside of the core vision of the actual agency. Okay, because you want to create buy-in and you want them to see the long-term success that this company is going to have, right? And you also want to have some team management and accountability here. Implement end-of-day reports and an end-of-week report system here to keep a gauge on what's actually being done for every single role in the agency, okay? And you also want to start thinking about who you could potentially promote into a team leader, you know, whether that's in the setter team, like the call center thing in the back end, or whether that's for the media buyers, or just fulfillment as a whole, right? More like a project manager, you could call it. And you also want to create department-specific KPIs and dashboards. And you basically want to assign decision makers to each single KPI to keep them accountable, right? Now, how do you know you've actually graduated at this level? You have a sales team closing a minimum of 20% of your calls without your involvement at all. You got a hiring pipeline with minimum of 3 qualified candidates for every single key position here, whether that is setters, closers, CSMs, media buyers, Go High Level, tech specialists, you name it. And you also have team members resolving 50%-ish of the issues here without your inputs at all. And you have clear reporting structure with daily and weekly visibility. And you also have, you know, team calls multiple times a week as well with the entire team. So you can all stay updated on literally every part of the process here. And you got a very clearly articulated core value and vision here for the company. And your team is actually embracing them too, you know, and following through on them. You're spending less than 10 hours per week on operational issues. You know, your operational wizard is now handling that essentially, okay? Now, moving on to the next level, this is going to be the team lead transition here. This is going to be the final part. I'm not really going to go any deeper into you know, how to get past this part of the agency essentially, because at this point, like if you are at this point with the agency, you should already be in the fucking mentorship, right? So you're going to be here though if you have between 40 to 80 clients. Your revenue is between 80 to 150K a month. and everything is broken and you find yourself spending too much time on hiring for the same positions, media buyers, tech people, client success representatives, it's getting increasingly difficult to try and manage your team because there's too many people essentially. And you have hit a new level of operational complexity and everything just feels broken overall. And it's getting harder and harder to manage all your clients while keeping the churn low. There's small mistakes, typos on ads, custom values in Go High Level that's not filled out correctly, using the wrong ads for one client, which was meant for another. And you feel like everything needs to be run through you in order for it to get done. And you feel you need to micromanage the team as well to keep them accountable on everything that they're doing on the day-to-day. In terms of the revenue structure here, at this point, you should have between 40 to 80 clients at 2 to 3K a month average retainer. You have the core servers and upsells become very, very significant here. And you're consistently collecting a minimum of 40K in new cash from paid ads every single month. In terms of your cost structure, you're probably paying your team on average between 25 to 40K a month at this point. You might have between 1 to 2 client success managers managing your clients, and those are costing you on average 8 to 10K a month. You have a setter who, again, this is kind of depending on what type of B2B setter you have, whether that is a 5% commission type setter, or you have one that's more like South American, that you pay 800 a month in base and commissions on top of that, depending on how many people that has been closed through him. And you have 1 to 2 closers here that on average, they're costing you 5 to 10, maybe even one killer closer that is costing you 10 to 20K a month here in commission. And you have 2 onboarding or tech VAs here. These are like Go High Level tech specialists essentially. That's costing you 1.6 to 3.2K a month. Again, the operational wizard VA here is costing you about 1.5 to 2K a month here too. And your media buyers, you got 2 of them at this point, and they're costing you 1.6 to 2.4K a month on average, because every single role, again, has a base plus a bonus structure in there to incentivize them for going above and beyond, essentially. You, at this point as well, probably have a personal assistant. You pay 1 to 1.6K a month, who is like your day-to-day communicator. And you have a project manager who's kind of doing all the decision-making in the backend for the fulfillment side of things. You pay 1.5 to 2K a month to. And you most likely have a media buyer team lead here as well, who you pay 3 to 4K a month to as well. And if you have a call center in the backend, I would probably, if you're managing them yourself, I would probably promote one of them to be like a call center manager, pay them like 3 to 4, maybe 5K a month. And overall, your overhead here in terms of the tech softwares, like all of that stuff, is costing you between 5 to 8K a month. And your profit margin is around 40 to 50%. Again, this really comes down to the type of agency that you run. And, obviously there's going to be some things here that's correct, a bit incorrect. This is just like the average I've seen across all the mentees we got on board and everything. And here you can just pause the video essentially and look at the financial overview here on average that I suggest, or I kind of project that you have at this point. Moving onwards into the organizational chart, you have a VA, you at least have another media buyer, another CSM, another closer. You have a call center manager, you have a personal assistant here, and you have a project manager and a media team lead, all right? In terms of the common pitfalls at this level, is that you have key team members may have unexpectedly churned, right? Closers, client success managers, shit is going to fucking break, all right? And the team task board is a mess and it's very difficult to stay organized, right? You don't really have a proper standardized project management tool that is like very built for scale to handle the amount of clients they're consistently signing and you have in total right now. And your client success manager is too busy and is feeling super overwhelmed. They're probably managing like 40, 50, 60 clients at this point and can't really take on anymore. And you don't have the time to check in on every team member here all the time, even though everyone is coming to you to basically solve the problems here. And churn is going up as a result of you growing really fast. You're bringing up, your closers might be overselling clients just to get them on board. And so as a result of that, they churn eventually. And your communication breakdowns between departments as well, because you have probably different pods here, different departments in the agency, and the communication is just not really there. And you have a lack of clear leadership structure below you, because most people, they just come to you directly, right? And if you've scaled ads, you may start getting disproportionate returns, right? Lower ROI here. You might even have a month where you didn't really profit anything, right? You literally went in negative on the ad side of things. Now, how to solve these problems? Firstly, you want to improve your culture with weekly team culture calls and bi-weekly one-on-ones with every single key team member on the team. And also implement culture building activities and systems in the backend as well, whether that is Slack channels where people, post what they're doing on the weekends, stuff like that. Now, you also want to create some structure between the different departments here as well. For the media team, the tech team, the client success team, billing team as well, operations side of the business too, and create very, very clear communication channels between the departments and initiate the process of decentralization. Okay, so I have an SOP on this, like a communication cycle for team members here that you can basically look at right here, like whose responsibility is what, and what type of, who should communicate to who and who should talk to the clients, all of that stuff right here that you can just pause and look through. Now, you also want to implement this sort of communication cycle as well between the team members so they know who to go to for whatever problem is or whatever the issue is, whatever. So like who's the right person to reach out to whenever a problem occurs, essentially. So you can pause the video and look through this if you want to. I'm not really going to be breaking this down super in depth right now because you're going to get full access to this either way. Now, pod system implementation as well. So you want to start organizing your team into pods. All right. This is basically mini business units that handle specific client segments, right? You want to promote top performance to team leads or hire the team lead if no one is worth promoting here, or the thing you hate doing the most, essentially, like aren't good at, don't want to spend the time on. For me, this was the media buying and the call center, for example. So I hired someone to come in and manage those type of people, essentially. And so a pod is basically like whenever you manage 50 to 60 clients, that's like one part of the business. They manage that side of the business. And then all the new clients gets into a new pod, which has its own client success managers, its own media buyers, tech VAs, all of that stuff. So it's like separate businesses. And that way as well, you can have like challenges as well, like whoever has the lowest churn for this month and the most amount of testimonials, for example, they get X amount in bonus or whatever, and that way you create more like this hunger within your people in the back end too. In terms of breaking down the pod here as well, here's kind of what you can expect when it comes down to expenses and everything. Again, you're going to get full access to this, so you can just break it down yourself. Moving on, I would implement weekly department head meetings here. All right, so basically like have department specific KPIs and reporting and assign KPI responsibility for department to the team leads. All right, so every single team lead of a department has certain KPIs that they need to hit for each single month, essentially. And then you meet with those team leads every week or so, like even twice a week, I'd say, every Friday, every Monday as well, for example. And you also want to develop a baseline capacity for each pod to give yourself and the team clarity on exactly who and when to hire in advance to prevent team capacity constraints. All right. For example, hire another CSM if your current CSM is handling already 40 to 50 clients and you're scaling spend, right? You want to hire and train a project manager to manage deadlines, client payments, and be your main point of communication to keep things organized here in the backend and running very, very smoothly, right? This is what we like to call decentralization, right? For example, every 40 clients, we need a new CSM and a media buyer. So when we hit 30 new clients on top of our current load, we'll start looking to hire, all right? And obviously, at this point, we already have like a pool of really good qualified candidates that we've interviewed in the past that we just kind of go to when you want to hire a new media buyer, a new CSM, even a new closer, stuff like that. In terms of the churn here, you want to implement weekly churn audits with the entire team to audit the reason why people are churning and execute on action items decided that correlate with the most frequent churn reasons, right? You want to implement monthly NPS surveys going out to the clients to get feedback. This is kind of what I mentioned, in the past. Every 30 days or so, you send them a message in GHL saying like, hey, would love your feedback for, how things have been going for the last 30 days. And then there's certain questions you ask them there. And that way that pulls into your client, to your agency tracking software, which has Claude integrated into it. So Claude will ultimately spot and know and notify like each client success manager which client to reach out to based on like the submission of that form and everything. We're going to go deeper into that, into the tracking side of things here for the agency later down in the course. But you also want to develop the skill of diagnosing constraints in your acquisition process here as well, okay? Because if your setter is not calling a minimum of $200, $300 per day, essentially, then you are losing out on a fuck ton of money, right? Same goes for at the end of every month, you run up a re-offer, meaning everyone who didn't close for the last 30 days, you send them an email, a message saying like, we got a special offer, and then you discount a bit just to collect even more cash, right? So if you pitch them all 6K, 3K, even 2K, for example, a month, and they didn't convert, you can do like a re-offer saying like, hey, we'll do like an AI audit for 1K, for example. And if you do that to 30 people and they all want to do it, then that's an extra 30K at the end of the month, right? And that type of offer as well can be fully automated using like a Google form and just Claude, right? All right. So how do you know you've actually graduated from this level of the agency? Okay. So you have a pod system fully implemented with team leads managing day-to-day operations. You probably have 2 pods at this point. And team leads as well is managing entire departments with little involvement from yourself, right? Your client success managers, whenever they are coming to you with a client who wants a refund, instead of them asking you, you ask the client success manager, should we refund them, right? So you basically reframe them into becoming more like a leader, right? Take more responsibility and everything. And you have very, very clear communication cycles that prevent most issues from reaching you, right? Every single team member knows who to go to whenever a problem occurs. And you're spending 80% plus of your time on strategic initiatives rather than day-to-day fires. And your client health scoring system as well is proactively identifying at-risk clients who might be churning, wanting to dispute you, chargeback, expect refunds, stuff like that. And you have cross-departmental projects completing on time without your direct involvement. And you might even have team culture so strong right now at this point that you have A players on your team that's referring other A players to join the team, essentially. This is like a prime example for closers, for example, right? If they've worked with someone who's been a killer at sales before, then they might refer them to come and join here, essentially, because the culture and everything is great. So that is pretty much the entire scaling roadmap here, upwards of from 0 and upwards of 150K a month. In the other modules or sections of the course here, we're going to be breaking down, for example, the paid ads, the sales systems, the client fulfillment, like very, very in-depth stuff here that you're going to be needing to solve all of these constraints that you're going to be facing with the agency of, when you're scaling up, essentially. So yeah, boys, that was pretty much the scaling roadmap to 250K a month.